Hi, everyone. Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Setting, the playoff version. The Winnipeg Jets now trail the Montreal Canadiens 3-0 in the North Division final. Hasn't been very pretty for the Winnipeg Jets. It has been very, very good for the Montreal Canadiens, who not only have won 6 games in a row, but haven't even trailed at any point during those games. Really an incredible performance from the Montreal Canadiens, and that has a lot to do with why the Winnipeg Jets are facing elimination. I'm joined this morning by Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette to discuss this series. And Stu, my assessment is that Montreal deserves the credit mostly for what's gone on here, and Winnipeg's just been a byproduct of how well Montreal has executed their game plan. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and in a way, I almost felt sorry for the Jets last night when they hit 2 crossbars. Like the way Carey Price is playing, it's almost not fair that he's getting help from the crossbars also. It was, but yeah, the Canadiens have really done a good job of frustrating the Jets. We saw it in the third period last night again. Jets players getting frustrated, some cross-checking penalties, some pushing and shoving after the whistles. They're just playing a really solid system, and they're shutting guys down. They've been doing it for the last 6 games. Well, 2 overtime wins against Toronto. The first one they were outshot 13-2 in overtime and won. But since Game 7 against Toronto, the Habs have just been playing an incredible shutdown type of hockey with puck support all over the ice. All 4 lines rolling. Philip Deneau had the most ice time last night. He had 17 minutes among the forwards, and Cole Caulfield had the least. He had 13 minutes. So he's rolling all 4 lines. The injury to Jeff Petrie last night could have an impact moving forward if he's out for an extended period of time, since they've been relying heavily on their top 4 defensemen. But the Habs have just been playing really solid hockey at both ends of the ice, and they've really frustrated the Jets.
I saw your tweet last night that it was starting to remind you of 1993. We all know that in 1993, the Canadiens won the Stanley Cup. I think they had something like 10 overtime wins that year. They just couldn't lose, it seemed, even for trying. But right now, they have a system going that just really, really works. And, I'm assuming that's why it reminds you of that.
Well, that and excuse me, the 2 overtime ones, as you mentioned, in '93 they won 10 overtime games in a row, which is remarkable. But there's some other similarities also. The Canadiens were winless in their last 5 games in '93. The same thing this year. Patrick Roy was horrible at the end of the regular season in '93. Then he found his game, just like Carey Price has done now. They had a lot of Paul DiPietros of the world who stepped up during that playoff run and played really well. And the Canadiens, so there's similarities there. They're obviously feeding off the overtime wins. The veteran presence, Marc Bergevin went out and got 6 guys who have Stanley Cup rings during the offseason and said that wasn't by coincidence. And 2 of them are Corey Perry and Eric Stahl, and we're seeing the key role that they're playing in this playoffs. Another one was Jake Allen, who the Canadiens aren't in the playoffs without Jake Allen, the way he played when Carey Price was either struggling with his game or injured. So there are some similarities. Also, it's been a long time since Montreal that I've seen the Canadiens car flags around town. People are excited. The Canadiens for the last few years, the fans have been frustrated, upset, angry, and now I think some of them are maybe starting to believe. It's hard to believe. Or sorry, the other day saying, what happened to the guys who were wearing the Canadiens jerseys for the first 4 games against the Leafs? They were horrible. They scored 4 goals in 4 games. Went into Game 5, figured they're done. And all the talk was about whether Marc Bergevin would be back, whether Dominic Ducharme would be back as head coach, all the changes that would happen in the offseason. And boy, what a difference since then. There's no way, you can't imagine Marc Bergevin not coming back now. You can't imagine Dominic Ducharme not coming back. And this team's on a roll. And in the playoffs, that's a key. You get a hot goal, you get on a roll. Excuse me, the Canadiens did that in '93, and they're doing that again now.
It's kind of at the other end of the spectrum in Winnipeg because, the Jets had 7 straight losses in their last 12 games of the season this year, regular season, and everybody kind of thought, well, they're destined to be swept out of the playoffs, except they only thought that was going to happen in the first round against Edmonton. Instead, Winnipeg did the sweeping. So now they get on a red-hot streak there against Edmonton and win 3 overtime games. And really, I thought they played an excellent brand of hockey, dealing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and company. But obviously they had the layoff here, and that did affect them in trying to find their game again. And of course, Mark Scheifele out for 4 games with the suspension. That was a self-inflicted wound. And then just not able to get back to that level that they were at. And I just, like I said before, I don't know if that's entirely about the Jets just not being sharp, or if the Canadiens are just playing such a really, really good style. I will say this, Stu, and I've said this a lot, that in 2018, when Winnipeg had a really good run, they played a different style against Minnesota and against Nashville than they did against Vegas. It was a really, I think they were favored against Vegas. And I think some people would have said they were favored against Montreal here. Hard to believe now when it's 3-0, but I think a lot of people would have said they were. And they just don't seem to be able to handle this style, which is incredibly tight checking, sticks in all the time, only a second or two, not even two, 1 second to maybe get a shot off, and then you're dealing with Carey Price. And in 2018, it was Marc-Andre Fleury. It really has a similar feel.
Yeah, and especially with Carey Price, I can't remember who it was in the first period for the Jets. There's a breakdown in the Canadiens' defensive system, a rare one, and somebody was wide open, and with Price made just a huge save, and we've seen that over and over in this playoffs, including against the Leafs, where Price just kept the Canadiens in games. And I think the tight checking is frustrating them. There's two guys on the puck all the time with the Canadiens, whether it's in the offensive or defensive zone. And then when they do get an opportunity on Price, he's making the big save, or they're ringing one off the crossbar, and that's got to be deflating. I think tonight, going into Game 4, I think a big thing is going to be who scores the first goal. Brendan Gallagher said after last night's game, he's been around long enough to know the hardest win to get is the fourth one in a series, and the Leafs know that because they were up 3-1 on the Canadiens in the first round and couldn't get that fourth win. And as Brendan Gallagher said, the key is not to let the Jets get some momentum or some belief that they can come back, because as Gallagher said in the series against Toronto, that's what happened with the Canadiens. They got the one overtime win, they sort of got some belief. They got the second overtime win, they really had belief, and they carried it on from there. So I think the first goal tonight will be huge. Obviously, if the Jets get it, it's going to give them a big boost. And if the Canadiens get it, it'll deflate them. And if the Jets can get the first goal, it might make them think that Carey Price might not be invincible after all. But the Habs are going to be with 2,500 fans in the Bell Center again tonight. The Canadiens are going to be pumped up to end it on home ice and not have to go back to Winnipeg. The Canadiens have had a really tough schedule. They played their last 25 games of the regular season in 44 days. And I think a break at this point would be good for them, especially since you look at the teams they would face in the next round, either Vegas or Colorado. Those are two high quality hockey teams. That'll be a real challenge for the Canadiens if they get that far.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that first goal philosophy has been the same since minute one of this series. And it's been a huge factor in it because Winnipeg has not been able to get a lead at any time. And how do you dictate the game? They've been chasing the whole time, and Montreal has been able to dictate the flow of the game in all instances in this series. And Winnipeg knows, and they've talked about it, we got to get ahead and try to play our game a little bit better and make Montreal be the team that has to chase. And they just haven't been able to do it. I think they've been hoping, and I'm not saying that this is their entire strategy, but I think they've been hoping that they would be able to wear Montreal down because the Canadiens have played so much, including that 7-game series against Toronto. They're run mostly 4D. They now have one D-man out, possibly in Jeff Petrie. And the hope from the Jets is that finally they'll start to wear down and the Jets will be able to get a little bit of a jump on them. But that just hasn't happened. I mean, not from the minute one of this series. I've never thought the Jets looked like they had more jump, even though they were the rested team. So hard to imagine it happening at this point. But Winnipeg played against Edmonton in a game, deciding game earlier this year when it was for a sweep, and Edmonton took them to triple overtime. I mean, it wasn't like Edmonton made it easy on them.
Yeah, and the Canadiens haven't trailed at all in the last 6 games. Not at all, not for a second, which really is remarkable when you think about that. So they've obviously been feeding off of that momentum. But again, if Jeff Petrie can't play, Dominic Ducharme said there'd be an update after the morning skate today. It was such a freak injury. He got his fingers stuck in the hole in the glass where the photographers put their camera, and he came back and he looked in a lot of pain. So if he can't play, as I mentioned earlier, that big four on defense of Weber and Sherratt and Petrie and Edmondson, Dominic Ducharme's been relying heavily on them. You have to think that Alexander Romanov would be the guy who would come in to take Petrie's place. He hasn't played a game in the playoffs. He's been a healthy scratch since game 1 against the Leafs. Tough situation to put a rookie into. And without Petrie, it's 24, 25 minutes of ice time a game that he's playing. Those minutes will have to be split between either Brett Kulak, most likely Alexander Romanov or Eric Gustafsson. It's going to break up the pairings that they have. So that, if the Jets are looking for a sliver of hope, if Jeff Petry's not in the lineup, I think that could provide that for them.
And Winnipeg conceivably could have a rookie coming into the lineup as well. They have Ville Heinola, who's the 2019 first round draft pick, who's been with the team all season, is very, very good hockey player, but young, and he's not a big guy. But realistically, I think one of the things that's been a real problem for the Jets has been moving the puck out of their own zone and through the neutral zone. And that's been a lot to do with what Montreal has been doing. And when we ask the Jets, what's the solution to that? They say it's just being quicker. Well, Ville Heinola is certainly a player who can make very quick plays in a phone booth. So, I think there's a chance, at least, I'm not going to make that prediction, but a chance at least that they do that. I don't see what they have to lose. Let's put it that way.
Well, that reminds me of Cole Caulfield with the Canadiens. Watching him play, like, how did the Canadiens make him a healthy scratch for the first 2 games against the Leafs? You notice it every time he's on the ice. That shot, he's quick. He's working both ends of the ice. His defensive game is solid. Him and Nick Suzuki have a real chemistry together, as we saw in Suzuki's power play goal last night with a great pass from Caulfield. Caulfield had 6 shots last night. They've been trying to tell him to shoot the puck more. That's his forte. So that sounds very similar. I mean, as I said, to me, it's ridiculous that the Habs didn't start the series against the Leafs with Caulfield in the lineup. Small, 5'7", 162 pounds, but a dynamic. Dynamic is one of Dominic Ducharme's favorite words. He wants his team to be dynamic. He says it over and over, almost every news card or Zoom conference he has. And, Cole Caulfield's a dynamic player. And in today's NHL, dynamic players are a key. So maybe that will give the Jets a boost in a similar way that Cole Caulfield coming into the Canadiens lineup certainly helped them. And, on the power play, the Canadiens power play, which was horrible all season, has suddenly started clicking. They got another power play goal last night, as I mentioned, and it was Caulfield setting up Suzuki for that goal.
I made the joke last night that if the Canadiens played the entire series shorthanded, they might still be winning. And that's, I honestly don't think that would be possible. But I mean, honestly, they've got more shorthanded goals than they've given up power play goals in the playoffs in 30 power plays. I mean, opposition power plays. That is unbelievable. I mean, there's just been some things that are incredible about what's going on with that Montreal team.
Yeah, they have some really, really good penalty killers. Joel Armia, 2 goals last night, both shorthanded. Paul Byron, Arturi Lehkonen. They have guys forwards who are just really, really good on the penalty kill. And not only are they good defensively on the penalty kill, when they get an opportunity to score, they can. Paul Byron with his speed, and that goal that Joel Armia scored last night, what a beautiful, it's a highlight reel goal. And his game, for Jets fans, it must be frustrated watching him play now. He's been frustrating for Canadiens fans. You watch Joel Armia, some game, he has everything, right? There's a reason he was a first round pick. He's got the size, the shot, the speed. He can protect the puck. He's good against the wall. He's got everything, but he's the invisible man at times and just disappears. And there's other games he just looks like he's not really interested. And then he'll play a couple of games where he looks like a superstar. And you go, why does he have that all the time? And I think with Ducharme putting him on Ducharme doesn't like to call it the 4th line, but it is the 4th line with Perry and Stahl. Armia has been fantastic. And, I asked him after the game last night on the Zoom, as I tweeted, I said, it's like Joel Armia's hockey IQ goes up 10 points every time he plays with those 2 guys. And I asked Armia about it, last night, not only on the ice, but what are you learning from these guys off the ice? And he said, on the bench, they're talking to him. Obviously, in the hotel on the road, they're talking to him. Video sessions, they're talking to him. He said, I'm just listening and learning, and we're seeing the results because Joel Armia has been a consistent, really good hockey player in this series against the Jets.
Well, yeah, and that is obviously a tough one for Jets fans because the Jets traded Armia to Montreal in order to get rid of the Steve Mason contract that they never should have signed in the first place. So obviously that one was really tough. I guess on the bright side of it for Winnipeg, signing Mason did light a fire under Connor Hellebuck, and he went out and won the Vezina Trophy. So I mean, there was some value in it as well. Although obviously Armia is a very good player, and I think Montreal just playing a great style that's really working. The Jets, from their standpoint, you just cannot quite put a finger on what is going wrong with them. They don't look like themselves. They're not able to really complete many passes the way they want to. And I thought a real indicator of what's wrong with them was seeing Kyle Connor, who is their leading goal scorer during the regular season, get a couple of seconds, just a second of an opening at the top of the slot yesterday, and he held on to the puck. And I mean, we've seen how quickly the Montreal players close, and of course that puck ended up in the corner. It just, you can't take even a second against that Montreal team to hesitate. You have to get the shot off immediately, and the Jets have found that out. They've got to do something different with it tonight. You got to start somewhere, and that's obviously their line of thinking right now. They sure don't have much to lose at this point. They just got to go out and give everything they possibly can to try to get one win.
Yeah, well, for Jets fans looking for a little bit of hope, we were talking in Montreal the same way about the Canadiens heading into Game 5 against the Leafs. It was over. I wrote a column, with print deadlines that we file stuff early. I wrote a column the morning of Game 5, basically looking ahead to next season, because there's no reason to believe the Canes are going to come back. As I mentioned, scored 4 goals in the first 4 games against the Leafs. Game 4, they didn't even look interested. It was like they were, they already had their tee times booked and they couldn't wait for the season to end. And then, as I said, the back-to-back overtime wins, and as Gallagher said last night, it just takes that one little spark to get a team to turn around. So for Jets fans who have given up on this team or don't think they can come back, as I mentioned earlier, I think tonight the first goal is going to be huge, and something they can maybe build on and believe they can beat Carey Price. The old saying, it's not over till it's over, and the Canadiens proved that in the first round. As Brendan Gallagher said, the 4th win in a series is always the hardest one to get. So I would expect the Jets to come out flying tonight. I mean, everything all these teams have gone through this season with the COVID and the daily testing and the isolation in hotel rooms and everything else. When I asked Philip Deneau the other night after the game, what was sort of the turning point? And he said when they were down 3-1 against the Leafs, they all sort of looked in the mirror and we don't want the season to end now. Like everything we've been through, we don't want it to end like this, not like this, not going out without just a whimper. And they fed off of that, and for everything they went through. And for the Jets, maybe they're feeling the same thing today with everything they've gone through this season and COVID and everything else. That they might, we don't want our season to end like this, not getting swept anyway. So I would expect the Jets to come out flying tonight with a big push. And as I said, that first goal. So we'll see what happens tonight.
I know they're glad that they're playing again today. They don't have to sit and dwell on that game from yesterday any longer. And I think Winnipeg Jets fans are kind of like, good, get it going. If it's going to end, let's end it now. And if they come back, then that's just a bonus. So anyway, Stu, hopefully we can come back and discuss more of this series or a wrap up of the series tomorrow or down the road here. But I really do appreciate you joining me. He's Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette. I'm Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun, and you've been watching Jet Setting.